Ahlan wa sahlan, Mauritania. Well, can you believe it? We have now arrived at measure 8, and I am certain you are going to love this measure. So let's get right into it. Now, you know what I'm going to tell you. If you learned and remembered everything from measure 7 last time, this is going to be very easy because we're going to see the same kinds of patterns. But let's find out if you did. Okay, so our goal today is, of course, to learn all the forms of measure 8. And by now, you know that's easy. So let's jump right into it. Okay, what is measure 8? Here's our root, once again, 3 root letters, fa, ain, lam. You know that by now. Okay, to make measure 8 is this. Now, just like we did with 7, you notice we're putting the aleph, which is really just a holder for this short vowel kasra, this I. Now, something unique to measure 8. This is the only time you see where we are putting a consonant in between the first 2 root letters. In the past, we've been putting them always in the front. Now, if you remember way back to when we were identifying roots, we said in some cases you may see a T stuck in the middle of the word. Well, this is exactly what we're referring to, is this case here, measure 8. And so, the first rule of thumb here is when you are looking for roots, just in words in general, always consider the possibility of the ta in the second position. Meaning if you come down to 4 consonants, always consider that this is a possibility. Let's take some examples. Okay, these are all real words. You notice they all have tas in them. And you notice if you just started eliminating stuff off the front, you would end up with too many letters. And so something would have to go. So what we want to know is, of these particular words, which one of these are measure 8s? Okay. Take a moment to look at those. How many of these are actually measure 8s? Hopefully you saw that 3 of them are, and it's these 3 here. Now why? Okay, because they have a ta in the second position. Notice, okay, we're gonna remove these alephs. They're gonna come away. But still, if we remove the alephs, that still leaves us with 1, 2, 3, 4 consonants. That's too many. And so who's our next possibility? Remember, ta in the second place, that's measure 8. Same thing here. We can see the root, sharaka. Okay, we know these are not letters that get added on. Okay, so the ta, again here, fakhara. This is the extra. When we take this away, we're still left with 3 root consonants. Well, what's the problem here? This has a ta on it. Well, the ta is not in the second position. If it were, we might have something, but it is not. Here, okay, we have a ta in the second position, yes, but if you notice, that would leave you with too many, there's still too many letters here. So this is one, hopefully, you will recognize this is not a measure 8. Okay, here you say, oh, we have a ta in the second position. This one will leave you with too few letters. If you take away the ta, you're just left with these 2 consonants. So we know this ta is part of the root. So there is somewhat of a bit of an art to it. The point is, always be aware of this as a possibility when you're looking for your root. Okay, so that is the basics. Now the great thing, let's talk about conjugation. If you learned your conjugations for 7, then the 8 is going to conjugate exactly the same way. So let's just jump right into this. Here are your measure 7 conjugations. And remember the rhythm, right? Measure 7, this is your present tense. Remember we had a prefix of an in, and we said that the aleph dropped away and the noon stayed. And remember, of course, it had a sukoon in here. But the main thing is the rhythm, right? In fa'il, tan fa'il, yen fa'il, ten fa'ilin, and so forth. Well, same rhythm here. Again, we're always going to have this sukoon on this first letter. Now, even though this happens to be a root letter, notice it's the same rhythm. Enfa'il, efta'il. Tenfa'il, tefta'il. Yenfa'il, yefta'il. Right, and so forth. Tefta'ilin, tefta'il, nefta'il, yefta'ilun, tefta'ilun. But notice you always kind of have this sukoon over the second letter, essentially this first consonant here. Now this is a good rule of thumb because it was the same way with measure 7. I'll give you a hint. It's going to be the same way with measure 10 and the same way with measure 4. All the remaining measures are going to be the same. So get used to that. So you don't want to, for example, right, be pronouncing this word like isatalama, ishataraka. Right? No, that's too many consonants. It's istalama, ishtaraka, iftakhara. Okay, notice that sound, that first syllable. Okay, even easier if we go to the past tense. It conjugates exactly the same, and this is completely regular. So remember the last time we had infa'altu, infa'alti, infa'alta, infa'ala, infa'alat, infa'altum, infa'alna. The same rhythm for measure 8, and I mean it's the exact same vowel pattern, same suffixes. Okay, this one, just to trick you, right? Okay, hopefully everybody caught that. You gotta love the PowerPoint find and replace. Didn't get that one, but it shows you how easy it is. We can just plug and chug from the old pattern. So the same rhythm as we had here, like in 7, right? It was infa'altu, ifta'altu, ifta'alta, ifta'alti, ifta'ala, ifta'alat, ifta'altum, ifta'alna. Okay? Boom, 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 boom. It's the exact same rhythm. Always a sukoon over this first consonant. Okay? And remember, of course, in the present tense, the aleph is going away because all it's doing is holding up that short vowel. So essentially, this is the exact same conjugation pattern as last time. There's nothing new to learn. If you like that, you're even going to love the masdar. Remember how we did the masdar of 7? All we did was we put this aleph in between these last 2 letters, and we said this pattern is going to hold for all the measures, so we weren't lying on that particular point. So we had infi'al, same rhythm on measure 8, ifti'al, infi'al. Again, always sukoon here, the short vowel kasra, and the key thing is the aleph there. This becomes the masdar, the doing of something. Okay, very, very simple. And just to preview again, this same pattern is going to hold for the final 2 measures, the only 2 that we have not looked at yet. Okay, so it's worth knowing. And I don't even have to tell you what the active participle is going to be. You should guess this by now. Mufta'il, just like last time we had munfa'il. So exact same rhythm. It's just fabulous. Okay, passive participle mufta'al. I mean, you can guess all that. Now, you want to know about the meaning. Well, here it gets a little tricky. Measure 8 does not have one consistent meaning. So it means basically you just have to learn these words. This measure is not extremely common, but you will see them. One thing that's important to note is that measure eights are very often used for verbs of cognition. In fact, most of the verbs that we're going to be concerned with that are measure eights happen to be verbs of cognition. So that's a good thing to remember. For example, here are some of the most common. I mean, this one may be the most important measure 8 word that we are ever going to learn. Okay, and this is, again, I didn't put any vowels here, but you can guess how this is going to be pronounced. Of course, it's going to be a sukoon, of course, always on this second letter, which is, actually the first root letter. So etakada, as in present tense, ataqid, yataqid, nataqid, is to believe or to think, a fact. I think this is true. I think this. I think that. أعتقد أن الطقس يكون جميل جدا اليوم. This may be the most important one we're going to see. Another important one, again, same pattern. اعتبر, اعتقد, اعتبر is to consider something. اعتبر مصر بلد جميل جدا. This is another one we use a lot. And اعترف, obviously coming from the verb عرف, اعترف is to acknowledge something. So you can see how these are all verbs having to do with opinion, with cognition, with thinking, and this is common of measure 8. And another point that you probably noticed, just like English in most languages, the higher up we're going in the measures, like the more advanced the words are. They're not common street language. And this is true as well. I mean, measure 8 words. It's like the difference between, somebody who says start and someone who says instigate, or, the difference between to go around and to circumvent. Well, I mean, this is measure 8, measure 10. This is at the level of to circumvent, to locomote. And so these verbs tend to be a bit of a higher level of usage. Okay, so I think you get the pattern. But as we said, there's no straight meaning for these. In many cases, in Hans Wehr, you'll actually see this. All right, notice what he says here: 8 equals 1. And this, if you wanted to know, I'm sure you've always wanted to know how to say this in Arabic. You want to write this down, of course. Let's see, 8 equals 1. Remember, number 1 is never numbered. So this is all measure 1. 2 and 4 mean the same thing. And here, 2 is a very straightforward, to make someone, this is to swallow, to make someone swallow. 8 equals 1. And you'll see that on a lot of roots, on a lot of words, where 8 equals 1. In many cases, 8 may be a more polite and refined form of 1. As in this case, this is probably one of the most frequently seen pairings of 1 and 8. Sama'a, very common verb. Sama'a is to hear. Istama'a, to listen. Well, obviously you can see what the relationship between these. You can hear something, not really listening. And again, listening has that kind of idea of cognition, of thinking, and so forth. I mean, that's really the only kind of meaning to 8 that you can find. Of course, you can look at 10 different books and they will try and explain what 8 is 10 different ways. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. As I say, these words are not that common. The main thing is be aware of this ta, and then also always remember that there is a sukoon here. You don't need to. It's not going to be written. We're not going to write it. You know this is istama'a, not istama'a, or something else. Okay, so that is the basics for measure 8. That's what you need to know. But before we go on, we're going to head into some. Now we're about to head into some exotic territory. So the next part, which we're going to tell you, is really for familiarization. This is something to be aware of when you see it. Do not try and learn these rules. It's certainly not worth your effort at this point. But be aware of this. Okay, we just talked about measure 8. Measure 8 was distinguished by what? The ta in between the first and second root letters. In some cases, the ta of measure 8 will turn into another T or D sound. You know that these are similar. You also know that we have several of them in Arabic. We have the ta, we have the hard ta, the golf club, we have dal, we have dod. In some cases, this letter will turn into that. So what that means is when you're looking for those tas, also be aware it could be a hard T, a ta, it could be a dal. You don't have to know why that is. Just be aware of that it's a possibility. It has to do with certain consonant patterns. The Arabs have decided that ta does not go well in between certain letters. And so instead of a ta, they use a dal, for example. Here is one example. This is probably a very famous one. Zahar, this root, zahara, is flower. It is probably best known by the noun. Zahra is one flower. Zuhur, several flowers. Okay, Zahara is flower. Okay, now this is the measure 8. Izdahara is to flourish. And again, you see how that relationship of meaning, how this is sort of like a higher level, fancier, more polite, nuanced way of saying this. But what we want to look at is the letters. Okay, this is no problem. This is no problem. But instead of a ta, someone's decided that istahara was hard to say because you go from a z to a t sound. I don't know. It sounds okay to me. But someone decided that was hard to say, so this became a dal. Izdahara. And after following a z sound, this will be a dal. Realize it's measure 8. They're just switching a T from a D. T, D, you try say them. They're very similar sounds. They're made in a similar part of the mouth. Okay? Here's another example. Sadama. Sadama is to strike, where we get the name of the lovely Saddam Hussein comes from. Okay, again, the measure 8 of this, and you can see the relationship. You're kind of seeing the pattern how 8 relates to 1. But anyway, the measure 8 of this, no problem here, no problem with the sukoon here. But because this is a hard, a sod versus a sin in the front of the mouth, instead of using a ta in the front of the mouth, we use a ta. We use a hard ta. I mean, this is nothing complex. Where you have a hard letter here, we use a hard letter here. So instead of istadoma, that would be very hard to say, istadoma. Istadoma in the whole thing. But realize, okay, any kind of T or D sound here, this could be a measure 8. You know these 3 letters, sa, da, ma, are not things we add. You know these are root letters, so this gives you measure 8. Okay, so I'm telling you, you do not have to know the rules about why this is. However, those rules are in your lovely take-home packet if you want to read them. You know how it is. If we tell you something you don't need to know it, everybody's going to want to go out and read it. If we say, make sure you know this, then no one will know. This is just a thing to be aware of. Okay, last point. You've probably noticed by now, wow, some of these measures can be confusing. They can look like each other. Here's an example. Suppose you came across this word, intaqala. In fact, you have seen this word. Intaqala is, of course, it's to move. Let's say you didn't know this word and you wanted to look it up. Well, you would use your knowledge of roots and measures, but you would come across a problem. Is it 7 or 8? And in fact, according to the rules, it could be either. This could be the measure 7 of taqala. We just put an in front. Taqala, in taqala. Or it could be the measure 8 of naqala. Right? Naqala, we put a aleph here and a ta here. Well, you could look up in your Hans Wehr dictionary under this root and under this root, and you will find this. There is no root for this one. This one does exist, and you'll find it. Okay, so that is one problem. You can find yourself in a position where it could be, there are more than one possibilities. Okay, in some cases you might just look them up. But the easier thing is to use your intuition here. First of all, we said measure 8s are more common than 7. I mean, if you were on a desert island and had to guess, you probably have bigger problems than this anyway. But if you had to guess, 7 is more common. 8 is more common than measure 7. Secondly, as we said, very few roots begin with ta. Because ta is used for so many other things, it appears at the beginning of so many other words. If you look, hopefully you have tabbed your dictionary already. You see the section with the letter ta is very, very, very small. There are very few roots with this. There are a lot more roots with this. Okay, so this is a better guess. If you come into a position where you can't tell if it's 7 or 8, go with 8. The other thing is, if you know anything about this root, naqala is to move something, intaqala is to move yourself. You would make a logical guess. But there may be some where you have to look them up in more than one place. Anyway, that is measure 8. As always, we have many fun activities. I know not as many as you would like, but get together with all your friends and you can play these at parties over and over. Trust me, it never gets old, as my good friend here would tell you. Alright, so on behalf of Mama the dog, we want to wish you all the best. We'll see you again at measure 10. Masalama.